I didn't plan to live in my mother's spare room at 47, but plans don't care about strokes. She woke up one February morning, tried to say my name, and only the first letter came out. By noon, she could move her fingers again. By evening, she could walk to the bathroom with my arm. The hospital called it a warning. I heard a countdown. I moved in the next day. I told my supervisor I needed time. He said to do what I had to do. I packed a duffel, a toolbox, and the thick folder with her papers. We had a system in 3 days. Morning pills in a blue dish, oatmeal, 15 minutes of walking inside the hallway. I wrote down times in a cheap spiral notebook. I kept the notebook in the top drawer by the sink. At night, I slept light. Every sound sounded like a fall. My brother came once in March. He brought a potted plant and stayed 11 minutes. He stood in the doorway to her room and spoke too loud. "How we doing, Ma?" She smiled. She always smiled when he was there. He was the firstborn. That smile had been trained long ago. When he left, he said, "Text me if you need cash." I said I didn't. He said, "You sure?" I said yes. He said, "I'll check in next week." He didn't. April was good. We made it to the backyard twice a day. I learned how to coach her without sounding like I was coaching. Left foot, good, hand on the rail. She liked the sun on the old lawn chair. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. In May, her blood pressure went wild. We spent 6 hours in a clinic waiting room. A nurse said she should have full-time care soon. I nodded. I didn't argue. That night, my brother called. "Let me help," he said. "I've been reading about guardianship. We can do this right." I said, "We're doing it." "I mean legally," he said. "So the state doesn't step in. I'll handle paperwork. I know people." I looked at my mother. She was asleep with her mouth open a little, like a kid. "What does guardianship change?" I asked. "Protection," he said. "You know how it goes. Scams, hospitals, predatory stuff. We put it in writing that I'm her legal decision maker. That way they can't jerk you around with bills." "Why you?" I asked. "Because I can get it done fast," he said. He was probably right about the fast part. He was always fast when he wanted something. "Okay," I said. "Send me the forms." He did. I read them late. They were simple and not simple. Boxes for physical care, boxes for financial decisions. A line for the person requesting guardianship, his name. A line for the person consenting. My mother's shaky signature filled that line 2 days later. He came by for it once more, loud doorway talk, once more plant smile. He said, "I'll file these." He did. April became a scan in a county office. June brought another scare, shortness of breath. I kept a bag ready by the door after that. On a Monday, a white sedan parked across the street. 2 people got out, clipped badges to their shirts, and walked up our steps. They smiled in the way that says they might not smile in 10 minutes. They said they were here for a home review. They used my brother's last name when they said guardian. I let them in. I showed pill bottles. I showed the notebook. They nodded at the right times. They asked my mother her birthday. She got the month right and looked at me for the rest. They thanked me and left. We were still a family. Paper said so. 2 weeks later, my brother arrived at 8 in the morning. No text, no warning. He had a folder and a voice full of hurry. "Ma, I found a place," he said, too cheerful. "It's the right call." "What place?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "A care residence," he said. "Short term, maybe 2 months, then reevaluate." "Who decided that?" I said. He did look at me then. "Me," he said. "I'm the guardian. You've been great, but this is bigger now. She needs professional help." My mother looked at his mouth, then at my face, then down. She didn't speak. Sometimes silence is agreement. Sometimes it's drowning. I couldn't tell which. He had the papers ready. He said he'd drive her in the morning. He didn't ask. He told. He hugged her and kissed the air near my cheek and left. I packed a bag for her anyway. 3 sweaters. A photo of her with my father under a lilac bush. Her slippers with the worn heel. I labeled everything with a marker, block letters. He took her the next day. He texted 2 hours later. All set. Clean place, nice staff. No address in the text. I asked for it. He sent it. I visited that afternoon. The hall smelled like detergent and chicken soup. Her room was small. A TV hung crooked. She was sitting up trying to fold a blanket that didn't want to be folded. She said she was okay. I believed half of it. I brought my notebook and wrote times on a new first page. Nurses' names, dosages, face names to face faces. I put the notebook in the drawer by her bed, top right, so I could find it without looking. My brother didn't visit that week. He sent 2 texts with emojis. On Thursday, a man in a golf shirt met me at the front desk. He said he was the care coordinator. He had smooth hands and a pen with the facility's name on it. He asked me to sign a family support form. I read it and didn't sign. He smiled like I would sign later. I didn't. On Sunday, my mother was dressed when I arrived. Hair combed, lips with a little color that wasn't there before. She looked like the old her, the Sunday school her. She squeezed my hand and said clear, "We're okay." I nodded. We were okay that day. The next morning, the house key didn't fit. I thought I grabbed the wrong ring. I tried again. The lock had been changed. I stood on her porch with a bag of mail in my hand. The neighbor's hydrangea smelled sweet in a way that made me angry. I called my brother. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Yeah?" "The lock," I said. "Why?" "Security," he said. "People break in when they hear an old person's gone." "Who has keys?" "Me," he said. "And me?" "I'll get you one," he said. "I'm in a thing right now." He didn't get me one that day. He didn't get me one the next day. He didn't answer the day after that. On Thursday, a white sign went into the lawn. It had a phone number too big for the small yard. A man in a clean truck hammered it in and took a picture. I stood there on the sidewalk and waited for my lungs to understand what my eyes saw. I called the number. A woman answered and asked if I wanted to schedule a showing. I said, "This is my mother's house." She paused for half a second. "Then you probably know it's under contract," she said. I stopped. "It's a cash offer," she said. "Quick close, 30 days. I hung up. I drove to the facility. My mother was asleep. I watched her chest rise and fall. I didn't wake her. I sat in the chair by the window and counted the screws holding the shade bracket. There were 4, 2 were crooked. When she woke, I asked, "Did you know about the house?" She looked at the TV remote. She said, "Your brother said it's practical." Her voice was careful. Sometimes careful is the sound of a rope. I didn't say the words I wanted to say. They were heavy, and she didn't need to lift them. I drove to my brother's apartment. He wasn't home. I left a note under his door. "Call me." He didn't call. 2 weeks later, I got a piece of mail forwarded to my address. It was a bank letter with a payment schedule. A large number with smaller numbers under it. The buyer had paid. The money had moved. Something about a care fund. I went back to the facility. The care coordinator had a new haircut. He smiled when he saw me. "Everything good?" he asked. "No," I said. He closed the door to his small office and offered me a chair. I didn't sit. "Who pays you?" I asked. He blinked. "The family," he said. "Which part of the family?" I asked. "We received documentation," he said. "Your brother is the guardian. He's approved the plan and the trust. It's all standard." I felt the room tilt. "Trust?" I asked. He slid a copy across his desk. It said Care Trust at the top in bold letters. There was my mother's name and my brother's name and a mailbox address that wasn't our mailbox. There were signatures. One looked like my mother's on a good day. It wasn't a good day when this was dated. "Who notarized this?" I asked. He pointed to a circle stamp. The ink was too dark. The seal lines were too clean. I didn't know why I knew that right away, but I did. Do you have the original? I asked. We keep copies, he said. I looked at the signature again. My mother's hand did a small tremor at the end of her last name when she was tired. The tremor always went down. This one curved up. I took a photo. He didn't stop me. I thanked him and left. I sat in my car and breathed and called my supervisor. I need 2 weeks, I said. Take it, he said. I went home and cleared the table and put the papers in a row. I pulled out the spiral notebook from Mom's kitchen drawer, my drawer now, and paged back to the week the trust was signed. On that date, at 10:15 a.m., I had written, OT, speech eval, Susan, Mark, 30 min, 20:70, tired, nap, 1:30. At 2:10, I had written, TV, quiet, no outing, no notary, no trip to a mailbox address. My phone buzzed. It was my brother. He wrote, You need to relax. Everything is handled. She's safe. I wrote back, Where's the trust bank? He didn't answer. I called the number on the Care Trust copy. A woman answered with a city voice. She said the trust was private. She said disbursements went to the facility every Friday. She said she couldn't confirm my identity. She hung up. I called the county recorder. I asked for the deed transfer on my mother's house. They sent a scan by email. It had a signature. It had a notary stamp. It had a date that matched the trust date. I looked at the signature again. The tremor curved up. Up, like a smile that wasn't hers. I drove to the mailbox address listed for the trust. It was a strip mall with 3 food places and a shipping store with a flag taped in the window. I went in and asked for the box number. The clerk said they couldn't reveal who rented it. I asked, Can I leave a letter? She said yes. I said, Who picks up? She said, A man in a blue jacket, Thursdays. I said thanks and bought a padded envelope. In the car, I wrote a note. I need to see the trust ledger for June and July. If you don't respond, I will file a request for records with the registrar in the court. J. Morales. I put a cheap USB drive in the envelope. I had loaded it with a single file, a PDF titled Request for Ledger PDF. Inside it was a blank page with a single placed dot in the lower right corner. If someone opened, printed, and returned it, I'd know that page. I dropped it off. I waited 2 days. On Thursday at 3 p.m., the clerk slid a small envelope across the counter. Pick up for box 287, she said. It was addressed to me. No return address. Inside was a single printout, a ledger, Friday transfers, round numbers. The dot I planted was there, faint at the corner. Whoever printed my bait used my page. I called the facility's billing office. I asked for their received amounts for June and July. They told me. The numbers didn't match the ledger. The ledger was higher. The difference tracked to a separate line. Coordination fee. I called the number on the ledger. I said my name and asked who processed coordination. They put me on hold and then didn't come back. At 10 that night, my brother texted, Stop, you're making this worse. I wrote back, For who? He didn't answer. I printed everything and took it to a small legal clinic. A woman with tired eyes and a crisp voice read each page. She asked 2 questions. She wrote a memo on letterhead and stamped it with a square stamp. The memo said this: We, as community legal assistants, note discrepancies in the Care Trust signature and irregular application of disbursement language. We recommend itemized accounting from the trustee and facility. 2 sentences. Perfect air. I mailed copies to 3 places by certified mail. Trust address, facility, county probate clerk. I kept the green receipts. I put them in the notebook slot where I used to write pill times. 2 days later, I drove to see my mother. She was wearing a sweater I didn't pack. It fit like a memory from 10 years ago. Pretty, I said. Your brother bought it, she said, and touched the sleeve like it might break. Her hands were steady. Her voice had a little more shape. The care coordinator appeared in the doorway like he always just happened to be passing. He had another consent form. This one was for adjusted services. I said, no. He smiled. I'll leave it for your review. He set it down anyway. My mother watched our faces. She didn't speak. Her eyes flicked to the door. I left early and went to the strip mall and waited in my car. A blue jacket came at 5:10. He had my brother's walk. He had my brother's head tilt. He took the mail from box 287 and tucked it under his arm and left without looking around. I let him drive away. I sat there and watched the traffic and did the math. Trust disbursements minus facility receipts. A small number repeated. Not big enough to make headlines. Big enough to buy a sweater like that every week. I didn't want the money. I wanted the lie to stop using her name. On Monday, the county clerk called. She asked if I could come in. She had a copy of my mailing with the green receipt. She had a copy of the trust ledger someone else had mailed her. Same font, same numbers, missing the dot. She had a copy of the deed transfer. She asked, "Can you bring me your mother's signature on anything from before the stroke?" I brought a box. Christmas cards, bank forms from a joint account from years ago, a warranty paper for a dishwasher, all the way back to a permission slip she had signed when I was in 8th grade. The clerk looked at them and took a photo with her phone. She didn't say much. She sent the set to a review unit. She told me to wait 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a family case is a calendar and a century. I visited my mother every day. I wrote notes like a court stenographer, nurse shift times, food, walk distances. I learned the names of the staff who actually lifted people. I brought donuts once from the cheap place with the old glaze. The nurse who usually wouldn't look up said, "Thanks," and meant it. My brother didn't show those 2 weeks. He sent one text with a thumbs up. On the 13th day, the county clerk called again. She asked if I could stop by. She had a short letter. It used precise words, 2 signatures. Preliminary finding. Irregular notarization on deed. Recommendation. Temporary freeze on trust disbursements pending verification. Notice to facility to continue care under existing arrangements. Notice to buyer to pause alterations. They had sent copies to the trust address and to my brother's address. They had sent one to me. The clerk said, "We don't pick sides." I said, "I know." She said, "We pick records." I said, "Good." The facility called me that afternoon. The care coordinator's voice had a new tone. "Mr. Morales, we received a notice. We will, of course, continue uninterrupted care while the matter is clarified." "That's what you do," I said. "Of course," he said. I hung up and drove there before he could call my brother. My mother was in the common room, watching a game show. Her hand squeezed the arm of the chair on the hard questions. I sat next to her. She didn't ask why I was smiling. 3 days later, a letter came from the trust mailbox. It was written in my brother's voice. He said I was making a fuss. He said I was embarrassing the family. He said all he ever wanted was for our mother to be safe. I folded it and put it under the binder clip on my stack. I wrote one word across the top with a pencil. Noise. I didn't answer. A week after that, the county clerk called again. She said, "We have one more thing. You should see it." I went in. She slid a small packet across the desk. It had a notary's stamp imprint in wax and a typed line. Seal number, revoked. She said, "The number on your mother's deed belongs to a retired notary who reported a stolen stamp last year." She looked at my face and then looked down. "They never found it," she said. I left with the packet and drove without thinking to my brother's apartment. He was there. He opened the door halfway. He looked like he had slept. I held up the packet. "You used a stolen stamp," I said. He didn't reach for it. He looked at me, then over my shoulder, then at his floor. "Careful," he said. "You don't want to make a thing you can't unmake." "I'm not unmaking anything," I said. "I'm putting it back." He smiled, not the good kind. "That house was a weight," he said. "You don't even live there. She was going to fall on the porch. You know that." "She didn't," I said. He rubbed his eyes with his thumb. I'm tired, he said. I've been tired since we were kids. Give me the key, I said. He went to the kitchen, opened a drawer, came back with a key. He dropped it in my hand. It was warm. He didn't say sorry, I didn't ask for it. The next morning, the county clerk's letter became an order. The buyer's contractor took down his tape from the living room wall and left. A yellow inspection slip appeared on the front door. The sign in the yard stayed, but the number didn't pick up. 2 weeks later, a formal letter arrived. The deed transfer had been voided. Trust disbursements were to be audited. A hearing date was set for guardianship modification. I brought the letter to the facility. The care coordinator didn't smile this time. He said carefully, "We serve the resident." I said, "Good." He looked at the copier like he wanted to pick it up and put it somewhere else. My brother called that night. He didn't say hello. He said, "What happens now?" "I take Ma home," I said. "To what? Stairs? Mold? You think you can—" "I've been doing it," I said. He was quiet for a beat. Then he said soft, "I was scared." "So was I said. "I thought if I rushed, it would be easier," he said. "For who?" He didn't answer. The hearing was a room with brown carpet and a judge who looked like he had learned how to listen before he learned how to talk. He asked simple questions. He asked for my notebook. I gave it to him. He read random days like he was pulling beans from a jar. He looked at my brother's folder. It was thin. He ruled like he was reading a recipe. Guardianship modified? Medical decisions shared? Financial decisions removed from my brother pending outcome of the audit. Interim trustee appointed by the court. Facility ordered to bill only actual services. Residence restored. No speeches, no pointing. Just lines and a stamp. I took my mother home that Friday. We moved slow, left foot. Good, hand on the rail. We sat in the kitchen with the afternoon light turning the counter the color of wheat. She touched the edge of the table, the chip where my father once dropped a plate. She said, "This is mine." Clarity, straight through the words. "It is," I said. We ate soup. She liked too much pepper. We laughed when she sneezed. I wrote the time in a new notebook. I put it in the top drawer. My brother came by the next week. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, and looked smaller. He asked if he could see her. I said yes. He sat in the chair by her bed and told a story about when we were kids, and he rode a bike down the hill and fell, and we both laughed until we cried. She smiled with her eyes closed. He cried a little again. He didn't ask for papers. He didn't ask for keys. When he left, he said, "Do you need anything?" I said, "Yes, Wednesday, 8. Come help with the bath." He nodded. He came at 8 on Wednesday. He didn't talk. He held her under her arms while I washed her hair. He said, "Water's warm enough." She nodded. We did it again Friday. We did it again the week after. No plant, no papers, just work. The audit took months. The letter at the end had numbers and commas and a line that said misapplied funds and a plan for restitution. I didn't read it twice. I put it in the file. The interim trustee kept the ledger clean. The facility billed for what it did, no coordination. The care coordinator got a new job somewhere else. Winter came. My mother had good days and days with fog around the edges. We learned the pattern of the fog. We learned to wait for it to lift. On Christmas, my brother brought a cheap tree and good lights. We sat and watched them blink. My mother fell asleep in her chair with the blanket I labeled in June. Her hand was warm. Around midnight, my brother said, "I'm sorry." He didn't look at me. He looked at the tree. "I know," I said. It wasn't a legal word. It was a family word. January was quiet. February had ice in a pipe that moaned but didn't burst. March brought a soft day that smelled like wet dirt. We went to the porch. We watched birds pretend they were new again. My brother came by with a bag of groceries and a dented can that made him swear. We laughed. We put the good cans away and cooked the dented one anyway. It was fine. He didn't touch money after that. He touched towels and plates and the dumb soap pump that always sticks. He changed the bulb in the hallway without being asked. He wrote 8 mois on his own cheap notebook and showed up then. Sometimes I still looked at the folder with the revoked stamp number and the upward curve on the tremor. It reminded me how fast a lie can move when it knows the path. It reminded me to keep records. Spring came. My mother had a morning where her voice felt like itself. She looked at both of us and said, "Boys," in the tone she used when we were 6 and 9 and she found us covered in mud but smiling. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. We had the house. We had the work. We had the quiet part of the revenge. The part where the lie stopped breathing and the truth took its seat back at the table. I made coffee. My brother fixed the crooked shade bracket, finally. He used 2 new screws. They went in straight. When he finished, he stood on the chair and looked at his hands. He said, "That's better." He wasn't talking to me. I wrote the time in the notebook. I closed it and put it in the drawer. I took a breath that didn't feel like holding anything up. My mother slept in the afternoon. The house made its small house sounds. The air through the vent. The soft tick of something old settling into place. I walked to the front door. I locked it. The key turned smooth. The porch was ours again. The sign hole in the lawn had filled in with grass. I stood there a long minute. No speeches, no headlines. Just the kind of ending that feels like a beginning when you're quiet enough to hear it.